Search for your inheritance in the dump, laughed her husband in court. The mother-in-law and mistress applauded, but the wife was preparing a surprise. The autumn wind swirled the fallen leaves, cradling them in its embrace like a caring father. Amanda walked down the street, passing the noisy boulevards and gray high-rises. The wind tousled her chestnut hair, causing her to wrap herself in a thin tweed jacket. The heels of her shoes clicked sharply against the wet asphalt, marking the rhythm of anxiety in her heart. Each step was a struggle. Ahead of her lay court, divorce, and a battle for justice in memory of the man who had become dear to her, Justin, the father of her husband. Amanda tried not to think about what awaited her in the courtroom. She knew that Edward and his domineering mother would stop at nothing to strip her of her inheritance. She understood that they would lie and accuse her of all mortal sins. Finally, Amanda hesitated at the entrance of the building. The heavy oak doors with worn metal handles creaked open, allowing her into a rather gloomy long hall. Amanda took a deep breath, attempting to combat the rising panic. A tense silence reigned in the hall, interrupted only by the quiet whispers of lawyers consulting their clients. Amanda, as if enchanted, approached her seat, passing tables cluttered with papers. It was then that she spotted Edward and his mother. Her husband looked sullen and tense, his face twisted in anger. Bertha, on the contrary, exuded cold confidence. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, and her eyes were full of contempt. Next to them sat a woman whom Amanda recognized immediately, Diana Morgan, the model and Edward's mistress. Her voluminous blonde hair, bright makeup, and provocative dress sharply contrasted with the austere and formal attire of the courtroom. At that moment, Amanda recalled how one evening, returning home late from work after a lengthy surgery, she had found Edward in Diana's arms in their living room. Tears filled her eyes. Her soul felt torn apart. Edward, as if nothing had happened, explained to his wife in a tone that brooked no argument that he no longer loved her and that he now had a new lady in his life. Those words pierced her heart like shards of broken glass, leaving a deep, unhealable wound. Amanda felt a wave of anxious shivers run down her spine as she met her ex-husband's gaze. Edward smirked and said in a low voice, "Search for your inheritance in the dump, you have no chance here." At the unexpectedness of it, she was taken aback and froze in place. Amanda Cologne, the lawyer Frank Clark said quietly, "Please proceed to the table." Amanda obediently sat down and immediately felt the eyes of the attendees on her, as if she were not a person but an exhibit in a museum. "We are considering the case of divorce between Amanda and Edward Cologne," the judge began, "as well as the division of property left by the late Justin Cologne, particularly his business and the land located within the city limits." The judge's voice was even, expressing neither sympathy nor condemnation. "Your Honor," said Edward's lawyer, "we believe that Amanda has no right to the inheritance." "Why not?" she interjected, unable to hold back. "Because Mrs. Cologne," Edward's lawyer continued, pointing at Amanda with an accusing gesture, "performed an unsuccessful operation on her father-in-law, Justin Cologne, and her actions led to the deterioration of my client's father's condition." "That's a lie!" Amanda exclaimed. "Justin had been ill for a long time, and I did everything possible to save him." "Stop playing with words, dear," Bertha said, looking at her with contempt. "You know very well that your interest in the surgery was more selfish than medical." "Are you saying that I harmed my father-in-law for money?" Amanda asked. "Exactly," Edward confirmed. "Amanda Cologne," the judge said, frowning, "can you provide medical documents supporting your claim that you did everything possible?" "Of course. Since the operation I performed, at least 6 months have passed. If I had done something wrong, Justin wouldn't have lasted a day," Amanda replied. An indignant murmur ran through the hall. Right after her words, the lawyer handed a folder of medical documents to the judge. The judge examined them, then raised his head and looked at her. "Amanda Cologne," the judge continued, "everything in these documents looks quite credible. But there is one but. Medical ethics require that the patient be informed of all the risks associated with the operation and that, despite its successful completion, if the patient has underlying conditions, It is not always possible to avoid the risk of complications, which could subsequently have led to Justin Cologne's death. Did you inform him of this? Yes, Your Honor, Amanda replied. I explained everything to Justin in detail. All the risks. And he still agreed to the operation, even knowing that all the doctors in town refused to perform it, the judge clarified. Yes, Amanda replied softly. Justin understood very well that he had no choice. Besides, the operation gave him another 6 months of life, which, in his condition, was quite significant. Please provide evidence for your claim, the judge said. Your Honor, Amanda's lawyer intervened. As evidence, we intend to present an audio recording of the conversation between Amanda and Justin Cologne, in which my client discusses all the risks and receives his consent. Okay, let's listen to this recording. Silence fell in the courtroom. Soon, the conversation was played back. Amanda's voice sounded calm and confident as she explained all the intricacies of the illness and the potential risks of the operation. Justin listened attentively, asking questions that Amanda eagerly clarified. In the end, his calm, assured voice said, I understand, Amanda, and I trust you. Do what you think is necessary. Well, said the judge when the recording ended, this fundamentally changes the case. Well, Bertha whispered, very interesting. Mom, what are we going to do next? Edward asked, animated. We'll see, son, we'll see. Your Honor, Edward's lawyer intervened again. We believe that the audio recording is not evidence that the operation was performed correctly. That's a lie too. Amanda exclaimed. I am not to blame, and I wanted nothing but health for Justin. Oh, come on, you just know how to hide your emotions very well, Bertha said. But that's not true, Amanda couldn't hold back. Please calm down and maintain order, the judge said, dissatisfied. A suffocating silence filled the room. Amanda felt her face burn with shame and anger. It seemed that everyone around her, the judge, the lawyers, Edward, Bertha, and Diana, was relishing her suffering. Meanwhile, seizing the moment, her husband's lawyer began his opening statement, outlining the intention to deprive Amanda of the inheritance left to her by Edward's late father, Justin. Your Honor, in addition to performing the operation itself, Amanda Cologne was entrusted with caring for my client's father during his illness. However, she not only failed to fulfill her duty but was also inattentive and neglected her responsibilities. Amanda was stunned. She had devoted the last 3 years of her life to caring for Justin, who had been diagnosed with a rare and extremely dangerous condition requiring not only surgical intervention but also careful medical therapy. We are prepared to provide testimonies, the lawyer continued with a sinister smile, that will prove that Amanda Cologne repeatedly left Justin Cologne unattended, leading to frequent falls and microinjuries. Furthermore, she irresponsibly managed his finances, wasting significant funds on personal needs. A pause hung in the air for a moment. Then timid applause could be heard. It was Diana and Bertha, sensing triumph, deciding to express their admiration for Edward and the entire process. The judge frowned in displeasure and then rapped his gavel. Amanda felt her heart squeeze with pain. The accusations were completely unfounded, as she rarely left Justin alone, and all her financial transactions were meticulously documented. Waiting for silence to return to the courtroom, Amanda's lawyer stood up and immediately presented a rebuttal, detailing her devotion to the late Justin, who had once been a friend of her father. All these accusations are malicious lies fabricated with the sole purpose of depriving my client of the inheritance that rightfully belongs to her, as per the wishes of the deceased, Frank Clark concluded, shocking the room. But the final word belonged to the one who held special power and authority. In that case, considering all the newly discovered circumstances of the case, the court adjourns for 2 weeks, the judge announced and rapped his gavel. The session is closed. Bertha snorted in displeasure and was the first to head for the exit. Edward and his new companion followed, their faces clearly showing disappointment at the postponement. Only Amanda and Frank felt that they had achieved a small victory in the form of a 2-week delay. Don't be upset, Amanda, everything will be all right. At least we now know what your husband is thinking, the lawyer remarked as they stepped outside. She nodded in agreement, watching the trio of Edward, Diana, and Bertha retreating toward a luxury car. Thank you, Frank. I think I'll be going now. I still have work waiting for me. You understand, Amanda said with a guilty expression. You're welcome. Call any time. And prepare for the re-examination, the lawyer said as a parting note, giving her shoulder a reassuring touch before heading to his car. Amanda wanted to walk to clear her mind and try to collect herself before her shift. She lifted her head, gazing at the overcast sky. The rain hadn't started yet, but the air was already heavy with its anticipation. Just like her soul, which sensed the inevitability of future disappointments. Amanda walked, lost in her thoughts. Fragments of the past related to Justin swirled in her mind. A kind man, with a rough but remarkably welcoming voice, who was always ready to help. Justin was a passionate person whose life was filled with ideas alongside the projects he considered his messages to the future. As an engineer by education, he dreamed of turning the city dump into a source of clean energy. Thus, in his unrealized plans, Justin envisioned a modern waste recycling facility capable of not only solving pollution problems, but also giving a second life to some of the waste. No one believes in this, Amanda, he would say, sighing and gazing into the distance. Everyone laughs, but I feel, it will be a great thing. This is my legacy. Amanda smiled, recalling her father-in-law's burning eyes and his insatiable passion for his work. He was a perfectionist, pouring his whole soul and energy into the project. Justin would spend hours talking with his daughter-in-law, explaining new technologies and his inventions that had not yet been patented. But most of all, he dreamed of the day when his facility would become the pride of the city. I feel that Edward should continue my work, the father said. He's a smart boy and will surely understand the importance of this endeavor. But Edward, unfortunately, never shared his father's enthusiasm. He was interested in entirely different things: money, fame, pleasure. Justin hoped that his love for his son could ignite a spark of interest in his work. But he was mistaken. Amanda vividly remembered how she tried to explain to Edward the importance of his father's project, how she spoke to her husband about the technologies and the opportunities that lay before them. But Edward had no interest in listening. He cared only for quick money and immediate success. Dear, understand, your father dreamed of his work living on, Amanda said at her father-in-law's funeral. He put so much effort into it. Let's try to realize his dream. But her husband only shook his head and smiled his cold smile. In his eyes, Amanda saw not a trace of respect for her father's memory. You know nothing about business. You're a doctor, that says it all. You know, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Yes, Dad built up his initial capital in the 90s and started his business thanks to his inventions, but this is a different time now. So all of this is nonsense. It's a project no one needs. It's better to sell the land and invest the money in something more profitable. Dad didn't leave this plot and part of his mini plant's equipment to you for nothing, he said. After her husband's words, Amanda froze in place, as if struck by lightning. Her heart tightened. Could it be that even now, Edward couldn't understand how important this work was to his father? Couldn't he at least try to realize that cherished dream? Now that Justin was gone, everything had come to a halt. Innovative developments, patents, promising collaborations with foreign investors, everything had been left to fate. But Edward and Bertha showed no interest in the matter. Amanda entered the subway as if seeking refuge from the harsh world. The crowd of people rushing about their business seemed foreign and hostile to her. She pressed herself against the cold wall of the carriage, closed her eyes, and tried to distance herself from the flood of memories. Amanda vividly remembered the day Justin was admitted to her ward. The diagnosis was grim, an abdominal tumor with metastasis to the liver. He looked weak and thin, and anxiety was evident in his eyes. Don't worry, Justin, Amanda said with difficulty, pulling herself together and trying to hide the worry in her voice. We'll do everything possible. The doctors gathered for a consultation discussed the risks and complexities of the surgery. Yes, it's a difficult case, Professor Brooks, the head of the department, said grimly. The tumor is located dangerously close to important vessels. The risk of bleeding is extremely high. Amanda, are you ready to take responsibility for this operation? I am ready, she replied firmly. I've studied all the data and analyzed the potential risks. We can handle this. Her confidence, along with her brilliant knowledge and experience, convinced everyone. A tense silence filled the operating room. Assistants and nurses were all focused on their duties. Amanda stood at the operating table, her hands in sterile gloves slightly trembling. The complex surgery lasted several hours, making her feel as though time had stopped. Well, we've succeeded. Everything went well, Amanda finally said, tiredly smiling after tying the last stitches. The patient is stable. The next day, Justin stabilized. He was gradually improving. Amanda visited him often, checking on his well-being and sharing the latest news. In turn, Justin never stopped thanking her for saving him. Amanda, you gave me a chance. I believed in you from the very beginning. Oh, come on, I was just doing my job, she dismissed. Amanda, Justin began, his voice quieter than usual, I wanted to talk to you about something important. About Edward. Amanda froze, looking intently at her father-in-law. Edward is not my biological son. These words struck like thunder on a clear day. Amanda felt the blood drain from her face. What do you mean? She whispered, unable to believe what she had just heard. Justin sighed sadly and, gathering his strength, continued. He was found in a thicket as a baby, wrapped in an old blanket. No documents, nothing. My wife and I. Well, we had another pregnancy loss, you understand? We just couldn't leave him alone. So we decided to adopt him. Amanda remained silent, trying to process what she had just heard. The world around her seemed to dissolve, leaving only these words, like icy shards, piercing her soul. Why are you telling me this only now? She asked. Why didn't you say anything before? I wanted Edward to find out himself when he was ready, Justin replied, but I couldn't hold back. I needed you to know. You're part of our family, Amanda. Therefore, you have the right to know the truth. And Edward, does he know? Amanda asked. No. I was afraid it would hurt him and that he wouldn't understand. I didn't want my son to feel unwanted, abandoned. I love him like my own. I always will, Justin answered. Amanda felt as if her world had collapsed. This is his story, she said barely above a whisper. He needs to know the truth. I understand. But please, give Edward time. Prepare him, talk to him when he's ready. Amanda nodded, unable to say a word. That day in the operating room, where she was performing a complex osteosynthesis, her fingers moved automatically through the familiar motions. She felt a burning sensation in her eyes, but kept her emotions in check. A surgeon can't cry, nor can they show weakness. She made an incision in the soft tissues with the scalpel and delved into the depths of the wound. She could clearly see that the bones were shattered at the fracture sites, with fragments held together only by muscle tissue. This meant she needed to reposition the fragments and secure them with metal plates and screw fixation. Give me the bone drill, size 3, she said calmly, without raising her eyes. Coming right up, Amanda, just a moment, the nurse replied readily, quickly handing her the instrument. Amanda took the drill and, with precision honed by years of practice, made several holes to insert screws that would secure the bone. Against her will, her thoughts returned to Justin's words. Of course, Amanda understood back then that she needed to talk to Edward. But how could she do that? What could she say to him? Amanda, how is the patient doing? The department head asked as he entered the operating room. Normal, the bleeding has stopped, the pulse is stable, and blood pressure is normal. We are finishing up the osteosynthesis, Amanda replied, trying not to reveal her inner turmoil. Good, continue, I'll check on the other patients for now. The department head left, and Amanda refocused on the surgery. She needed to finish it quickly and efficiently. She inserted the last screw, secured the bones in the correct position, then sutured the incision, treated the wound with antiseptic, and covered it with a sterile dressing. "All done," Amanda said, addressing the operating nurse, who helped her remove her gloves and gown. Sitting at her desk in her office, Amanda tried to organize her thoughts. She needed to talk to Edward, but she lacked the strength to do so. Days turned into weeks, and she still hadn't been able to tell her husband the truth. After 6 months, everything went awry. On that fateful day, Edward called her in the middle of her work. "I have bad news. Dad fell from the second-floor ladder. He wasn't feeling well. The ambulance is already on the way." "What?" Amanda barely held herself together. Confusion froze in her eyes. "What happened? How could he fall?" "I don't know," her husband replied, panic lacing his voice. "I found him unconscious on the second-to-last step." Amanda rushed to the exit, not yet realizing that this call would change her life forever. She arrived at Justin's house to find him in a state of severe coma. "The patient has been unconscious for some time," the paramedic said. "There is a suspicion that he had a stroke." Unfortunately, Justin never woke up. And a few days later, he passed away. "He died of cardiac arrest," said the doctor who came to examine the patient, but his health condition after the operation was quite stable. However, one cannot completely rule out that the stroke was related to the consequences of the surgery. Amanda felt shattered. She understood that she had done everything possible to save her father-in-law's life, but had not been able to protect him after the operation. "It was just an accident," she repeated mentally. "Justin fell from the ladder. It's not my fault." However, Edward and Bertha did not believe it was an accident and immediately found reasons to blame her. "You're a murderer," Edward said. "You wanted to get the inheritance, and you intentionally performed a bad operation on my father." These words hit Amanda like a hammer. She couldn't believe that the people who had seemed so close to her were capable of such treachery. Amanda stared out the window of the subway car. Scenes from the past flashed before her eyes: Justin's face, his grateful eyes, the operating room, the tense faces of her colleagues, and finally, Edward's face, twisted in rage. She got off at her station, struggling to hold back tears. She had to go to work, to her patients, to her life, which had now been turned upside down. In the clinic's corridor, Amanda ran into Helen, the head nurse. Helen had always been kind and caring and had become a true friend to Amanda at work. "Amanda, what's wrong with you? You look as pale as chalk," Helen asked with concern. "I'm fine," Amanda tried to smile, but it didn't work, just didn't get enough sleep. The nurse took her hand. "I can see something happened. Talk to me. Don't keep that burden on your heart." Amanda took a deep breath and poured out everything: the court case, her husband's betrayal, Bertha, and the accusations leveled against her. "That's just awful," Helen said. "But don't lose hope. We'll help you. Remember, you're not alone." Back in her office, Amanda took a deep breath and tried to compose herself. She needed to finally distract herself from her problems and get to work. "Next patient," Amanda said to the nurse. Kevin Stone. A middle-aged man with a caring expression entered the room. "Hello," he said. "I'm here for a consultation. I've been having occasional abdominal pain." "Yes, please tell me more," Amanda replied, trying to focus. At that moment, a man burst into the reception area, holding a child who, judging by his appearance, was unconscious. The boy's face was pale, his lips were blue, and blood was seeping from a wound on his thigh, soaking through his shirt and his father's hands. "Doctor, someone, please help," the man shouted, pushing through the crowd that had quickly gathered around. "My son fell off his bike." Amanda quickly left her office, realizing the situation was serious. "Calm down, what's your name?" she ordered while examining the boy. "How did he fall? Where does it hurt?" "I don't know," the man whispered. "My name is Tyler, and my son is Matthew. He was just riding down a hill, lost control, and fell. Amanda nodded and curtly commanded the nurses. Get a stretcher quickly, and please prepare the bleeding control kit. Soon, the boy was placed on the stretcher, and Amanda, supporting his head, continued her examination. Matthew, she began, as if imprinting the name in her memory, can you hear me? Matthew, open your eyes. He didn't respond. His breathing was shallow and intermittent. Weak pulse, said the nurse who had already prepared the instruments. Measure his blood pressure, Amanda continued, quickly examining the wound, and do an electrocardiogram. Okay, the nurse began connecting the equipment. Tyler, Amanda addressed the father, does Matthew have any allergies to medications? No, nothing, the man replied confidently. Good, Amanda quickly assessed the depth of the wound. Fortunately, the vital vessels are unharmed, it's essentially just scratches. Overall, it's not as serious as it seems. Don't worry, we'll do everything we can. What are you going to do? Tyler asked. We'll perform a minor surgery, Amanda said. I'm sorry, but we have to. A surgery? Right now? What if Matthew gets worse? Tyler exclaimed, gripping her hand, but Amanda smiled and assured the young father that the injury was not life-threatening and that the operation would involve applying a special bandage. The pulse has improved, reported the nurse monitoring the boy's condition. Good, Amanda said, keep monitoring, everything will be fine. The boy was just scared. This happens sometimes, after all, he's a child. Many kids get into scrapes at this age. Thank you, Tyler whispered after the procedure was finished, thank you for everything. Amanda felt noticeably flustered. It was also gratifying to realize that she had chosen the right profession, one that saves both health and lives. And that was the most valuable thing she had at the moment. She smiled softly. It's my job. No need to thank me. What's important is that Matthew is healthy. But Tyler, deeply affected by the experience, was in no hurry to leave. He felt the need to express himself, to share the burden of his experiences over the past years with someone. And Amanda, unintentionally, inspired his trust. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking, I just don't know how to express my gratitude to you. Amanda nodded, inviting him to share his story. She sat down at the table against the wall and gestured for Tyler to sit across from her. Please, have a seat, I'm listening. Tyler sat down in the chair and suddenly felt the weight of exhaustion crash over him. He sensed that the tension of the past few years was pouring out, like water breaching a dam. A silence hung in the air, interrupted only by the quiet sound of cars outside. Amanda remained silent, giving him time to gather his thoughts. I don't know where to start, Tyler whispered in a quiet, slightly hoarse voice. Well, start with what matters most to you, Amanda gently suggested. Tyler slowly raised his eyes, and Amanda saw a bottomless depth of sorrow in them. My wife, Martha, left when Matthew was very little. He was still a baby, I was left alone. From the very beginning, everything was difficult. I didn't know how to swaddle him, how to calm him, how to understand his cries. I worked without days off, grabbing any opportunity just to feed my son. Well, it seems you managed, Amanda asked. Managed. Somehow. But those were years of loneliness, sleepless nights, and constant fatigue. I wanted Matthew to feel loved and protected. I dreamed of giving him everything I didn't have as a child. I tried to be both a father and a mother to him, cooking, washing, cleaning, playing, reading him stories, all by myself. Tyler's voice trembled at that moment, and he clenched his fists as if trying to hold back the rushing emotions. There were times when I lost it. Sometimes I was terrified I wouldn't cope, but I couldn't afford to give up. Matthew is all I have. He is my life, my hope, my purpose. Amanda listened without interrupting. She fully understood how difficult the father's journey had been. And what about Matthew? Does he remember his mom? Amanda asked after a long pause. He probably remembers, Tyler replied with a sad smile. He was so little when Martha still visited us. But sometimes, in moments like today, I see in his eyes that he's afraid of something he doesn't understand. It's as if he senses that I'm not like other fathers. He feels your love, Amanda said confidently, and that's what matters most. He also sees how hard you work for him. You are a true hero to your son, don't doubt it. Tyler looked at the doctor with such a long gaze, as if trying to find confirmation of his own doubts in her words. I thought I should be different for my son. I've seen how other fathers play with their kids, how they spend time with their families, and it's all different for us. It's just me and Matthew. Well, there are no perfect parents, Amanda calmly remarked. Everyone makes mistakes. At that moment, she saw how her words of support gradually penetrated Tyler's heart, and his tense shoulders relaxed a bit. What if, the father hesitated? What if he starts asking questions about his mother, about why she left, and I don't know what to say and don't want to hurt him with my words? Well, in my opinion, it's best to answer all questions honestly, Amanda said as she approached the window. Tell him how much you love him, how you've cared for him. Explain that sometimes people make mistakes and not everything goes as we plan. But the most important thing is that he can always count on your love and support. Be honest with your son, and he will understand everything. Tyler slowly nodded. His eyes sparkled with tears. Thank you. You're the only person who has listened to my story without criticism. Well, I believe in you and Matthew, she smiled. You are a true family, and you will definitely be happy. A sweet smile played on Tyler's lips. His mood noticeably improved, and the incident with his son's fall no longer seemed so out of the ordinary. Tyler left, continually thanking the clinic staff for their help. The end of the shift approached unnoticed, and soon Amanda, having changed, headed for the exit. For some time now, she had been living in the suburbs, in a rented apartment where the cats howled outside her windows at night, and the neighbors often threw parties with broken dishes and fights. But today felt different. It was as if her life problems, having piled up, decided to give Amanda a little breather. The night passed almost unnoticed. In fact, only in the early morning did she dream of her late grandmother Clara, who for some reason stood at the edge of the city dump, gazing into the distance, her eyes piercing the mountains of trash. Why did she have that dream? Amanda didn't understand. And what was the point of racking her brain over it if every dream interpretation book explains dreams differently? The morning in the surgical department began as usual, with the barely perceptible aroma of coffee at the nurse's station and the sharper smell of bleach. Shortly after, the corridors filled with the soft footsteps of nurses and muted conversations of doctors. But in the room where little Matthew lay, there was a special atmosphere. It was warm, bright, full of childlike spontaneity and hope. Amanda, having rested after her intense shift, came to visit her little patient. She entered the room with a smile and paused a couple of meters from the bed. Matthew watched her with clear interest in his eyes. "Hi," she said cheerfully. "Good morning," Matthew whispered, blushing slightly. "How are you feeling?" Amanda asked as she moved closer. "Better." Amanda sat down on a chair and started talking with her little patient, asking simple but interesting questions. "Do you like toy cars?" she asked, noticing the toy truck model that Matthew had kept in the pocket of his pants. He perked up and nodded. "What other cars do you like?" Amanda continued. "Big and red," the boy exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with joy. "That's great. You know, I also love red cars," the doctor said with a smile. "And I can draw. Would you like me to draw you a red car?" Matthew's eyes widened with excitement. "Of course." Amanda grabbed a notebook and some pencils from the drawer and began to draw. She depicted a bright red car speeding down a road surrounded by green trees. "Here you go," she said, handing him the notebook. "A red racing car." The boy eagerly examined the drawing. "Wow! It's beautiful," he exclaimed. "Would you like me to tell you the story of this car?" Amanda offered. "Yes, I want to." This car lived in a magical forest. It had very powerful engines that allowed it to fly, and it helped all the animals living in that forest. One day, it met a little bunny that had gotten lost. After such an intriguing introduction, Amanda began to tell the story, depicting the animals with vivid imagery and intonations. Matthew listened, breathless. His gaze followed every movement of her lips, absorbing every word she spoke. Then the car helped the little bunny find his mom, and everyone was very happy, and then they had a celebration. Matthew, enchanted by the story, smiled dreamily. "Can you tell another one?" he asked. "Sure," Amanda smiled, then pulled out a bright picture book about animals from the nightstand. "Let's read," she said as she opened the book. She read slowly and expressively, choosing intonations for each character. Matthew listened with great interest, looking at the colorful pictures. "Look, here's an elephant," Amanda said, pointing at the image, with huge ears and a trunk. "Trunk," Matthew repeated, gazing at the picture. "And this is a giraffe. It has a very long neck to reach the tastiest leaves from the tallest trees," Amanda continued, while Matthew listened, mesmerized. He was utterly captivated by her voice and her ability to immerse him in the wonderful world of stories and animals. "And this is a lion," Amanda said, pointing at the fierce predator. "The king of the beasts." Matthew laughed. "Arr," he imitated a growl. Amanda laughed along with him. It was incredibly pleasing to see Matthew come to life, his eyes filling with joy. She realized she had found a way to connect with this little sensitive boy, who had been deprived of the warmth of a mother's embrace almost since birth. "You know, Matthew," she said, "you're a very good boy with a kind heart. Soon you'll get better and be able to run and play again." "Really?" he asked, his eyes filling with hope. "Yes," Amanda confirmed. "I'll come to see you every day. We'll draw, read, and tell stories." "Thank you." "You're welcome." "I'm glad I can help you," Amanda replied. She sat with him a little longer, telling stories and showing him pictures. The little patient was completely enchanted by her attention and care. "Amanda," Matthew suddenly asked, "will you be my mom?" She was slightly taken aback. "Probably not, buddy. I can't be your mom. But I will take care of you while you're in the hospital. I'll be your kind fairy who helps everyone in need." "Kind?" Matthew repeated, his eyes sparkling. "Of course," Amanda said with a smile, "fairies, as we know, always take care of children and help them." "Well then, be my fairy." After spending some more time in the room, Amanda stepped out, and a nurse met her in the hallway. "He's so happy to see you, Amanda," the nurse said with a light smile. "Yes, that's true. What a sweet boy. I think we'll become friends," the doctor replied. As Amanda headed to the break room, she felt that the day was just beginning. She understood that Matthew was a special child who needed care and attention, and she visited him every day. The little one eagerly awaited the arrival of the kind fairy from the clinic to share his dreams and plans for the future. "I want to grow up and be a driver of a big red truck. I'll haul sand to construction sites to build beautiful houses." Amanda listened attentively and encouraged him. Together, they drew houses and trucks. And, of course, she understood that she couldn't replace his mom. But at the same time, she had become a true friend to him, a person who would always support and help him. Moreover, Amanda saw how Matthew was becoming more confident, how a spark of joy ignited in his eyes again. One day, while she was reading him another fairy tale, Tyler walked into the room. "Good afternoon, Amanda," he said with a smile. "Thank you once again for saving my son." "Oh, it's nothing. He's wonderful, and I'm glad he's feeling better." Tyler stood in the room for a while, then somewhat hesitantly spoke to her in a low voice. "Amanda, I would like to invite you to dinner. There's a small cafe in the city center. Let me thank you in this way for taking care of my son." Amanda felt a little flustered. "Thank you for the invitation." "I'd be happy to," she replied, smiling. "Wonderful. Would Wednesday at 7 in the evening work for you?" Tyler asked. Wednesday at 7, she confirmed. Tyler said goodbye to Amanda and Matthew and left the room. The doctor looked at the boy. He was smiling and squinting one eye. I'm going to dinner with your dad, Amanda said. That's great, Matthew replied. On Wednesday evening, as agreed, Amanda arrived at the cafe. Although Tyler looked a bit nervous, his eyes sparkled with joy. Hello, he said, standing up from the table. Thank you for coming. Hello, Amanda replied, smiling. The young people settled in and almost immediately switched to using you in their conversation. Tyler ordered dinner, and they started chatting about everything under the sun. They talked about many things, work, life, and Matthew. To her surprise, Amanda learned a lot of new things about Tyler, especially when she realized that he wasn't as he had initially seemed. In fact, he was a kind, sensitive person who loved his son very much. Working as a mechanic at a machine-building plant, he was well acquainted with almost any technology. He could fix anything from wristwatches to complex machinery and programming equipment for machines. Amanda, thank you for everything, Tyler said when dinner was over. Matthew is feeling much better. Oh, stop it, she replied. I'm glad I could help. Believe me, any other doctor in my position would have done the same without hesitation. I hope we can meet again? Tyler asked hopefully. Of course, Amanda replied. Tyler paid for dinner and walked Amanda home. The walk and the evening as a whole were simply wonderful. In Amanda's opinion, she hadn't enjoyed her free time so much in a long time. Even during the romantic phase with her ex-husband, she couldn't recall such emotions. This was because Edward had been stingy, both with gifts and flowers, as well as with emotional expression. Tyler, on the other hand, was different. In a fit of feeling, he could recite poems by famous poets aloud, making her heart literally leap from her chest with indescribable happiness and delight. Then Amanda told him about her inheritance. A waste recycling plant? Tyler asked cautiously, repeating the question. She nodded in agreement. And I hope it's possible to take a look at this unfinished marvel, he inquired. Of course, it is. Just keep in mind that it's a city dump. The smell is quite something, Amanda warned, sensing that Matthew's father was serious about this. Tyler was indeed determined to go all the way when he decided to visit the realm of household waste and garbage on his day off. The sun was already setting when Tyler and Amanda arrived at the site. Painting the sky in crimson and purple hues, it cast long shadows from the mounds of trash that loomed on the dump like unfriendly, ragged mountains. Amanda walked ahead of Tyler, whose work boots thudded dully in the dust and fine debris. Here it is, she said, stopping and pointing to the unfinished metal structures that resembled the skeleton of a giant animal more than an industrial facility. This is the plant. Tyler, used to the orderly world of the factory where machines stood in rows and parts were neatly organized, was taken aback. Chaos reigned everywhere. The air was thick with a pungent smell of decay mixed with gasoline and something sweetly cloying. The steel structures were rusting, eaten away by time and the elements. Justin dreamed of turning this into something useful, Amanda continued, noticing that Tyler was literally mesmerized by the sight, recycling waste to generate energy, but unfortunately, he didn't have the time. Impressive, Tyler muttered, trying to ignore the smell. I didn't think such a thing was possible. What's so surprising about it? Amanda scoffed. It's a problem for the entire city. All the waste. It doesn't just sit here for no reason. It poisons the land, the air, the water. Yes, I've noticed how dirty our river has become, Tyler nodded. We used to swim there and fish, but now you can't even go near it. Here, Amanda took a step forward, navigating around a pile of mangled refrigerators. This project was conceived to address these problems. It was also supposed to provide jobs for the homeless people surviving here. Well, can't you just move all of this somewhere else? Tyler said, looking around, trying to grasp the scale of the issue. Where? To another area? What would happen there? Our dump is just a drop in the ocean, and the amount of waste increases every day. Yes, so it needs to be recycled, Tyler replied, looking at the mounds and the dilapidated plant. The idea isn't bad, it might work. I'm sure of it, Amanda smiled. Justin put a lot of effort into this project. He had blueprints, schematics, and designs. He even assembled several prototypes of special machines. Prototypes? Tyler perked up immediately. Where are they? In the hangar, Amanda pointed to a small building that had miraculously escaped destruction. That's where most of the documentation is kept. All right, let's go, Tyler exclaimed and hurried after Amanda. The hangar turned out to be a vast space filled with all sorts of mechanisms and contraptions. Dust covered everything with a thick layer, but even through it, one could discern the unusual structures made from makeshift materials. He was a real master. Amanda lovingly ran her hand over the rusty surface of a homemade press. He could create something new even from old parts, even though he was a businessman and clearly didn't need the money. Tyler wandered among the various devices as if enchanted, inspecting them closely. A spark of enthusiasm ignited in his eyes. Accustomed to working with machines, he saw hidden power in these makeshift creations, an unconventional approach to problem solving. What about the documentation? Can we understand how all this works? Tyler asked hopefully. The documentation is in the container. Amanda pointed to a metal structure. I hope it's still intact. After that, the young people rummaged through the container, finding yellowed blueprints, handwritten notes, diagrams, and calculations. Interesting, Tyler whispered, flipping through a thick notebook filled with Justin's handwriting. He studied different types of waste and developed technologies for recycling it. Yes, he dreamed of making our city cleaner. We can do this, Tyler suddenly said, not taking his eyes off the notebook. We can get this plant up and running. Are you serious? Amanda raised an eyebrow, surprised by his enthusiasm. Tyler smiled and nodded in agreement, saying it was time to head back. Subsequently, he started with the basics. First, he checked the electrical wiring, replaced some parts with more modern ones, and cleaned and repaired the damaged mechanisms. Amanda, in turn, helped him study the notes and blueprints. I think we can start with recycling plastic, Tyler said, showing her the schematic of one of the devices. This press can crush plastic, and then it can be processed into pellets. What about the rest of the waste? Amanda couldn't hold back. Well, not all at once. You have to eat an elephant in pieces, Tyler smiled. First plastic, and then we'll tackle other types of waste. Days turned into weeks, and Tyler spent all his free time at the dump. At first, he was just a mechanic, but he learned quickly and developed into a true engineer. I think we'll soon need an assistant, or maybe even more than one, Tyler said, sitting in the hangar with the blueprints. The press is too complex for just the two of us to handle. Are you thinking of someone from the factory? Amanda asked. Maybe we should reach out to students. There are enthusiasts interested in this topic. We can give it a try. Amanda supported his idea. And they did. They placed an advertisement in the newspaper, at the factory, and in the local university's hall. Soon, several young people came forward wanting to join their project. Day by day, they transformed the old dump into a place of new opportunities. From torn and dirty heaps of garbage, they created a new future. Meanwhile, Amanda continued saving lives in the surgical department as she always had. Tyler, the factory mechanic, became an engineer who gave waste a second life. And even though Justin was no longer alive by this time, he still continued to inspire his followers. Naturally, Edward and Bertha were unaware of all this and had hardly prepared for the retrial. Meanwhile, Amanda's lawyer, Frank, was not wasting any time and had done a tremendous amount of work. It turned out that on the day of the alleged accident, Justin did not fall off the ladder by chance. It was preceded by a fierce argument with his adopted son. The former maid, who had overheard everything but was forced to quit after the incident, revealed all of this to the lawyer. In reality, Edward knew he was adopted and had even found his real parents, who had turned to alcohol and were living on the dump, scraping by on random earnings. In a fit of rage and resentment toward his non-biological father, Edward miscalculated his strength and accidentally pushed Justin off the ladder. Although the shove was relatively weak, it was enough to overwhelm Justin, who was weakened by illness. Realizing what had happened, Edward, with Bertha's assistance, immediately concocted a fabricated story about an accidental fall, intending to indirectly blame Amanda for it. But he hardly thought that the persistent Frank would be able to uncover the truth. Thus, the retrial became a disastrous event for Edward. Instead of being the plaintiff, he found himself in the defendant's seat. Diana vanished as if swept away by the wind, and Bertha began swearing that she knew nothing about the scheme. But for Amanda, her former mother-in-law's words no longer mattered. Together with Tyler, she fulfilled Justin's cherished dream, and the recycling plant was slowly gaining momentum. Matthew recovered. The only reminder of the incident was a small scar on his leg, which, according to his dad, clearly added some gray hairs. But the most important thing wasn't that, it was that by standing up for her inheritance, Amanda was able to start a new life with Tyler and Matthew. They had a beautiful, modest wedding, and they were simply